Because if I don't get customers to the dance in this early digital journey, which distribution isn't helping me in those 28 points because they're hidden right now. So I have no way of funding distribution in these early points yet because they're hidden. So I need distribution to change their agencies and change the way they can help me get customers to the dance. In the way that the initial transaction happens, distribution was a big chunk, and then that's going to drop every year for the next decade. So, we need to sign up that first 30 days, pretty critical in getting a customer, but not as critical when you're selling the one-time big solution as opposed to a land and expand pilot. And then after that point, I need to shift about a third of my money programmatically. These are the education and training. These are the enablement things. These are the co-selling and co-marketing. These are the pure incentives and motivation and loyalty stuff. The 100 things I need to do with partners. I need to shift a third of that money after the point of transaction to make sure I have 3 really strong sets of partners, and only one set are transactional partners. Everything else is non-transactional. So I need to fund it differently.
So their mindset has to be, we're going to look at the continuity of the subscription or the consumption, as opposed to that initial transaction being the whole enchilada. And so ultimately, the old mindset where distributors are holding inventory or are doing things a very traditional way, and their added value was transmitted to the channel in a different way. It changes the financial equation in terms of how the manufacturer sees the distributor and how much funds they're going to allocate to them based on a completely new model.
Yeah, so let's break it down as the P&L for the distributor. There is a very important part of their business that doesn't go away, which is distributing atoms. You need to take laptops from China, land them, distribute them, into centers close to the customer. That's a big problem. I mean, during COVID, we emptied that supply chain and we're still struggling to fill it. And, there's chip shortages and everything else. There's a hugely important piece here, but they have new competitors here. Like Ingram is a little bit less worried, I think, about TD SYNNEX than they are about Amazon and DHL and FedEx and USPS and UPS. There's a whole set of supply chain expertise, regardless if you're distributing a server, an air conditioner, a refrigerator, something that weighs a ton. It takes up a certain amount of cargo space. It takes a certain amount. And if Amazon can get that to the customer with 1 day prime, regardless of the size, the weight, the scale, and cost, that's a different model. So Amazon, is obviously buying airplanes and buying up electric vehicles at the moment. They're the new competition for moving atoms. So now distributors aren't locked into their own little industries and HVACs over there and ITs over here and telcos over here. They're competing against experts in 3PL logistics. So that's one. 2, capital and credit facilities. When you're a small MSP in Kansas and you've got $1 million deal that you're working on, you need the financing because that customer, who you think are going to be net 30 become net 60 and then net 90. And you're, leveraging your house and your mortgage up against winning this deal. The distributor plays an incredibly important role of fronting the $1 million for you and letting you hang on to that net 60, net 90 and stay afloat until you can get your margin and until that flushes. But guess what I just mentioned? 76% of companies are going into this subscription consumption model. The first 30 days with the customer doesn't need to be financed. It runs on a credit card. So the $1 million HP server, HPE server, is GreenLake is now $9,000. And if a customer can't afford that first $9,000 30-day amount, HP is going to finance that internally. And the market's going to allow them to take on that risk. It's not a lease. It's not HP Financial doing it. It's part of their core business now, based on churn rates, based on lifetime value customer, and based on the market, allowing the manufacturer in this case to take on the risk, like SaaS companies do, like others do in other markets. The capital and credit facilities completely get eliminated here. And who's going to be helping HPE and other companies with this are probably big banks. And there's a new set of competition. So you're competing with Amazon over here. Now you're competing with, the big Lloyds of London and Bank of America here on how money flows, in these subscription models. And then the final piece, the only piece that we really have to talk about now is marketing. So Tech Data, before they were taking private, we got to see their last financials publicly. About 80% of their profit was marketing agency dollars. So at Lenovo, when I would cut them $1 million check every quarter to put my logo on a page and run a webinar, 99% of that was profit. And it was a little bit of taxation. It was a little bit of pay to play. All the big distributors were all billion-dollar players with us. And you built that into your gross to nets. You had to sign that check or you were at risk that they were going to start pushing HP or Dell, because Dell would write the check and you wouldn't. And you just played that game, and we played it for 40 years.
Understood. Very clear.
But that game is changing very quickly with the program dollars being spread out, these customers understanding these new buying journeys, understanding the elongation of the buying journey. All this changes and says, what if I didn't write that $1 million check? What if I just paid distributors, the 3% margin to do what they do? Well, then you have entire distribution industry globally, a $1 trillion industry at break even. If they're not generating marketing dollars, like they've convinced people that there's 75,000 bars that hang on every word they say. And it's just not true. There are so many other ways, it's over my shoulder, of ways to get to those bars. They're in 143 social groups. They listen to 100 podcasts. They read 59 magazines. There's actually 14 spheres of influence. I could give you 14 of those lists that capture the entire industry, millions of partners. And you can get to their hearts and their minds directly into these watering holes without having to go through distribution to get into those watering holes.
Maybe it's a good time to segue. I'd like to, whatever you care to share, how are those communities being hosted? And I'm involved, as everyone seems to be, more and more with LinkedIn communities, but I suspect that there's a much wider variety of communities out there in the type of environment you're talking about. So tell us about some of the proprietary communities supporting that transmission of knowledge and information.
Yeah, so I just wrote a big report. We can probably include the link in this podcast. But I looked at all of the watering holes. So on the social side of things, there's 81 LinkedIn groups, but they're actually dying on the vine. If you look at engagement, if you look at how many people are in those 81, and it's become almost like a vendor spam, one-sided spam session in many of these groups. So a lot of the activity at the partner level, by the way, has moved over to Facebook. So I looked at 25 to 30 Facebook groups that have all kinds of engagement, and we're talking thousands of messages a day and pretty vibrant communities. But breaking free of LinkedIn and Facebook, some of the biggest activity is, for example, on Reddit. There's 110,000 MSPs that are in subreddits, having all kinds of conversations, free of vendors, free of others, and it's anonymous, so you can use all the expletives you want as you're in these groups. Other places like Clubhouse, they're actively. I actually run a Clubhouse room with 4,000 people in it, having active channel technology conversations. It's another avenue.
When is that, by the way? I'm sure our listeners would like to know.
So Clubhouse got a lot of buzz in the last year. It's an audio-only format. And think of a community of people that log on in real time.
So I know what it is. I'm asking you when is your specific moment on Clubhouse? This group that you're hosting.
So the group itself is called Tech Alliances. It's run by Bader Hamden, and I think he runs every Friday or something like that. But it's got over 4,000 people signed up. But I'm just giving you examples of other platforms now that are picking up the watering hole conversations for